thank you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pike Off OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode in 2026 of the Right of Way Report. My name is Amy Serrato, and Kelly Wilson is on the stream, and we're excited to be with you. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about this year. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet and give you all the information you know, and then put a lot of the detail in the Substack that'll come out along with the podcast. And so, Kelly, how was your weekend?
Pretty good. How about yours? Been busy around here, but
I went to see the women play Mississippi State. The OU women's basketball team, they're fantastic this year. I think they're 14-1 or 15-1 right now. And we had fifth row seats, and I went with my middle school basketball team and the third grade basketball team, and the girls really had a good time. So it was a good weekend.
no, I bet they did. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I think that they'll end up doing pretty well at the end of the season.
Hopefully.
So we have some topics today we think everybody are going to like. We're going to start with a legislative rundown. We don't have any of our bill numbers yet that we're running this year, but we do have our topics. And so we wanted to give you a little intro to that, and then provide some information about how you can follow along with the legislative process through what's called LEGISCAN. You can set up a monitoring system where you get notifications when certain bills come up for discussion, and also the app that you can put on your phone to find out who your representative is, who your senator is, and how you can contact them when we need you to, because we're going to hopefully use this podcast to give immediate action items for our listening audience and for all of our Pike Off OTA friends across the state to contact their legislator when we need them. And so after we get done with talking about legislation, Kelly's going to talk about some right-of-way information and talk about the original acquisition cost versus what ends up happening during the eminent domain process. So I think you'll find it pretty interesting. And we have some links underneath our stream. So if you're interested in what we're talking about, you can check those out later. So I guess I'll get started with our legislative slate. We have a very optimistic and exciting topic list that we'd like to change. Of course, we'd like to change more than what we're proposing, but we're going to start with this. So I'm going to add this to the stream and see what happens to us. There we go. Okay. So because a lot of us are being affected by this eminent domain process, and a lot of us probably didn't even know what eminent domain was 4 years ago, Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation and Pike Off OTA have worked really, really, really hard to reform our very weak eminent domain laws. And so for those of you who don't know, eminent domain is when the state or the federal government has the sovereign power to take your property for public use. And it's codified in the United States Constitution, and then our state constitution and our state statutes explain how that can be used. And for those of you who don't know, there was a huge United States Supreme Court case in 2005 called Kelo and New London. And if you're interested in learning about that without reading a whole novel, you can watch The Little Pink House. And I think it's free to watch on Amazon Prime or Netflix. And it talks about how the state allowed Pfizer to come in and condemn a bunch of homes for a tax incentive. And they sued, and unfortunately the United States Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision said that it was okay to use eminent domain, the taking of private property, for economic development purposes, and that is not okay. We hope that gets overturned at some point, but the state of Oklahoma actually in 2006 said, we don't really agree with that. And so they had a state Supreme Court case, Muskogee versus Lowry versus the county commissioners, and they said that you can't use eminent domain for economic development, but then the legislature didn't do anything about it. And so what we are trying to do is reform those eminent domain laws. And so we wanted to just put up some titles for you. So, and I'm going to go through where you find these titles and what they actually mean. So we have a state constitution and a state statute, and title, that's the topic of what the state statutes are talking about. So we want to improve just compensation. So right now, the state statutes say they have to give you just compensation. Well, what is that? And the state of Oklahoma says that's fair market value, but that can be manipulated in a lot of different ways. And so many other states have made it much stronger, and they say that you have to have a plus up of fair market value. They say you have to have 150% of fair market value, but I don't even think that's good enough. So we wanted to go with a Minnesota standard and the Florida standard and some of the other standards. There's about 10 states that say, no, you have to give the person replacement value and you have to make them whole so they don't end up having to pay out of pocket to move for the project that this condemning agency needs. And so we have a couple different legislators running that for us in the Senate and the House. And we hope that that one goes through rather quickly. It seemed to be very, they were fighting over who was going to get to run that bill. So I think they're excited about that one. And then the Landowner Bill of Rights, we want to restore the right of first refusal. So if you've been following us along with us the last 3 years, we were trying to make it really hard for a condemning agency to take extra land. But if they did take extra land they didn't end up needing, they would have to sell it back to the original owner. And unfortunately, at the last minute, one of the not so citizen-friendly Republican legislators in the House added a line that said, you can give the person right of first refusal, except you have to allow the state agencies to swap their land. And it happened right before the vote, and we didn't have a chance to strike it, and it got placed into law. So we need to restore that right of first refusal and get us into the 21st century on what what eminent domain laws really should be. And then our third topic in the ORT bill topics would be public use defined. So our 2006 state Supreme Court case said that you can't use economic development for public use, but our state statutes don't say that. And so we need to go in and clean those up and make sure that it's quite clear that you cannot use eminent domain for economic development, because I would argue with anyone with a ton of data that the current turnpike plan in Cleveland County and McLean County has nothing to do with transportation, has nothing to do with safety, and everything to do with economic development. And Kelly can show you picture upon picture of all developer land lined up right along the proposed paths. And it also has to do with the fact that they can't get new bond money without a new project, but we want to make sure that there's an actual use. And in that vein, we want to have really strong economic development laws that you cannot use eminent domain for economic development. We want to make the condemning agency prove that it's not for economic development and that they actually do need to take your land. And that's what necessity hearings are. And we have several different versions of this law with several different legislators. And we're excited about that because Florida has an awesome necessity hearing law. And they have a really big turnpike system too. And they've actually told their turnpike system, no, you can't build here because you didn't really prove true necessity. So we're real hopeful about that one. And then this one is kind of funny because no one that's grifting from the government is going to support this one, but the citizens will love this. You cannot take any land that's going to be used for debt service. In other words, if you are using the land to produce a revenue or produce something, a tax base that you're going to then turn around to support your own debt, sorry, you can't have my land. So that was an actual suggestion to us by one of the representatives, and we really liked it. So I don't know that that's going to get heard in committee because that would take out a whole bunch of condemning agencies across the state of Oklahoma. But if I was an Oklahoma citizen, I would seriously consider contacting my representative and my senator and telling them to support that, because I think that would change the landscape in Oklahoma. Kelly, do you think I covered everything in Title 27?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So then we've got our Oklahoma Turnpike Authority reform bills, and that happens in Title 69. And we have several bills that we've tried for a couple different years and some new bills, but the first one, or not, these aren't in any specific order. They were just in the order that I pulled them up on my computer this morning. But one of the bills we're running is a debt ceiling, and this would cap the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority debt to $4 billion. We actually wanted to cap it last year at $2.5 billion, but since then they have increased their debt by over $1.2 billion. And so our number would have to be $4 billion. And this would be similar to the Grand River Dam Authority. The legislature capped them at $1.4 billion, and they're super mad about it because they can't expand their empire without more bond money. But the OTA will fight this one really hard. They do not want us to cap their debt. And after this project, they're probably going to be $15 billion in debt if we can't cap it. But we're going to try because it's the fiscally conservative and responsible thing to do. And then cross-pledging. This is a really long, kind of lengthy topic, but if you don't understand cross-pledging, well, let me back up. Originally in 1947, when the Turnpike Authority was started, it was one bond for one road. And when that bond was paid off, then the road would be turned over to the state. But the OTA, the Turnpike Authority, and Governor Turner figured out that this was a super, super duper public-private graft and grift. And they changed the statutes in 1955 to allow one turnpike to pay for another turnpike, and we call that cross-pledging. That means that the Turner Turnpike and the Will Rogers and the Kilpatrick, who are the biggest money makers, they pay for all the losers, like the Chickasaw and the Muskogee and the Cimarron. And so we don't think that the OTA should be allowed to build a road that doesn't pay for itself, like the Southern Extension Turnpike through Cleveland County and East-West Connector that will never, ever pay for themselves without the help of the Will Rogers and the Turner and the Kilpatrick. And so we want to prospectively ban cross-pledging, put it back to the original 1947 intent and the 1954 Oklahoma citizen vote that voted for one turnpike, one bond. And then the sunset location authorizations is also kind of a funny story, but not really. They have 35 location authorizations that have been in statute sometimes for more than 60 years and not been built. So think about if you're going to build somewhere or move somewhere and you buy a house and then 5 years later they tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to build a turnpike there. We got permission for that 60 years ago. You weren't even born, but sorry, we're going to take your house. And so we've been talking to the OTA about this, and they actually agreed that 17 location authorizations should come out. They wrote a report in September of 2024, and they've named and listed all of their location authorizations. So we are going to sunset them, and that means that we're going to strike out and say that if you don't build your location authorization in 5 years after your first authorization, then it becomes dead. And that's to protect us. The 1993 legislative authorization, a location authorization that they said was the Southern Extension, which was really the H.E. Bailey Spur. That was authorized in 1993. And then the outer loop, the East-West Connector, was authorized in 1987, but not built until, or still not built. And so we feel like this is a really important one. We hope that the legislators get behind it.
Legislative. Do we have time for do we have time for a quick question from the comments? Let's see here. We have Montoya asking, can OTC be disabled?
Does this mean the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority or the Oklahoma Transportation Commission?
I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah, if it's the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority can be disabled or disbanded, yes, we have a great wind down plan that we're going to put out there in the Substack and talk about on the podcast. But it'll take time, and it'll take intellectually honest and morally superb elected officials. So if you know any of those that have any power, we'd love that insight, because we've pointed out a whole bunch of really bad things, but no one's done anything yet. So we're hoping this investigative audit can be the start of the downfall of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. Okay, legislative intent. Legislative intent, this means that we're supposed to have 3 bodies of working government: the legislators, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. I would tell you that none of those are a working branch of government like we learned in high school history. But the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is legislatively authorized, meaning they get their power from the legislature. And the judicial system is supposed to make sure that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority doesn't break any laws that the legislature set out. But when we went to the Supreme Court in 2023, the majority opinion said that the OTA can do whatever they want, and they have a self-deference. They can defer to themselves and make their own authority as long as their turnpikes or whatever they're building connects to another one of their existing turnpikes. But the 3 justices that dissented said that is absolutely absurd. We're not a rubber stamping board. We should be adjudicating what the legislation says. And so what they told us in their dissent was that you need to go back to the legislature and specifically say that the OTA cannot self-interpret its authority, and the route authorizations are mandatory, not flexible, meaning they use the location authorization for the southern extension that was actually describing the H.E. Bailey spur. And the 6 Supreme Court justices in the majority said, yeah, whatever. And we don't think that's okay, obviously. And so we're taking the state Supreme Court, the justices, the 3 dissenting minority judges, we're taking their suggestion and telling the legislature, get some power back because you have none. And then we have 2 more, a real notice bill that makes the OTA directly notify homeowners, because right now they have to put a notification in a newspaper for a couple days, and then they can go get their bonds validated. So I don't think that's right. They should have to come to you at a certain point and tell you they're going to take your land so you can have a chance to fight. So we're putting that in. Then the abutting landowners bill is one of our members. She is going to be right next to the east-west connector, not taken, but she wanted to know if there could be a bill written that would compensate the neighbors of the turnpike, meaning that if you had a devaluation of property, which would always happen, or compensation for damages like flooding that might happen from the turnpike being next to you, or the noise pollution or the light pollution, things like that. And so we think that's a great bill, and hopefully that can move through. All right, and then we have one more title. That's Title 51, and that's an open record request form. I don't know if any of you know that you can ask for open record requests from any state agency, and they can just ignore you forever. And the only recourse you have is to sue them. And so we wanted to put a bill in that says they have to respond to you within 30 days, or the Attorney General can compel them to do that. And so we feel like this is a no-brainer, but again, common sense and no-brainer bills don't seem to go anywhere in the Oklahoma legislation so far, the legislature so far. So we're hoping we can change that. But just quickly, I wanted to let you know about two great resources that you can use this session if you want to follow along. So I'm going to share my screen and show you this cool app that we've got. So let's see. So if you download this this app, and I'll go back, this app is the 60th Oklahoma's Legislative Guide, the 60th Legislature, and it's you can get it at the App Store. It's free, and you can use the map function on the bottom to find out who your representative is or who your senator is. It has a map function. And this is great because you need the legislature likes to hear from their own constituents. So if you're not sure who your person is, get on this app, download this app, and check this out. And then when you want to contact people, you can click on, go back to the House, and you can click on somebody's name, and it'll tell you who their legislative assistant is and where they're located in the Capitol. So it's our friend Bob Ed Culver. It tells you when their term limited up, tells you what committees they sit on, and you can leave yourself notes. So if you visited them on January 5th, you can say, I visited them, and you can click down into anyone you want and find out anything about them. You can also go back and look at leadership. So there's a state, there's a Senate. You can click on leadership and check out who you need to hear about. The floor leader is the one who puts the bills on the floor, if you're into all this stuff. Or you can just listen to our podcast and we'll tell you who to contact. But this is kind of fun to follow along. And then you've got the standing committees, and we really care about the aerospace and transportation committees in both the House and the Senate. And so you can know who's on those committees when you're going to contact them about what bills you would like to support. And then you can look at the calendar to see what's going on. But we really recommend this app. It's free, and so check that out. And then if you're still super interested, you can go to this website, LEGISCAN.com, and you can make a free account. And what I do is I go up here to the bill tracking, and I go over here to bill tracking, and you can see I'm tracking 4 bills already. The check mark here means I agree with them. The question mark means I'm watching them. I have no stance. But if you wanted to, for example, search for anything eminent domain, you would type in eminent domain and then hit enter, and all the bills that are currently have eminent domain in any text, you could click on there and read them and decide if you wanted to watch them. You get a notification every day if a bill has moved through the system, so you can set that up. And we'll tell you exactly what bills when we get our bill numbers to watch. But this is the only way that we can keep up with what's going on because everything moves so fast. So LEGISCAN is this great opportunity. And then one more thing before I turn it over to Kelly is the OSCN.net. And OSCN.net has everything you want to know about the Constitution, the state statutes, like I talked about, Title 27, Title 69, and Title 51. And it has all the legal research you could do about the court cases, the Supreme Court cases. So if you wanted to go down and check out legal research right here, you can see you have our Constitution you can read, you have court rules, you have session laws, and you have statutes. So for example, if I click on statutes, I'm going to go down to Title 69, which is the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority statute. Well, it's the roads, bridges, and ferries. And I click expand. And then I'm going to go all the way down to the section number. The section number is 1705. So we have a lot of statutes. A lot of our laws need to be repealed. We don't need to add new laws. We need to repeal a lot because no one's following the law anyway. Here we go. Turnpikes, Article 17, Turnpike. So you got 1701 to 1736. Now, the one that I'm most interested in is 1705 because it's a mess. Okay? This is where all the location authorizations are. And I talk about this statute in this section a lot in Substack. You can read all the way down. And it tells you, for example, they've got the Turner Turnpike. That was number 1. Then the Southwestern, the H.E. Bailey Turnpike, number 2. The Will Rogers, number 3. the Indian Nation, number 4, number 5, the Cimarron Turnpike, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go back down and you see, oh, number 28, that's what they used for the Southern Extension. And then you read it, and we'll show you a video on another podcast of how it's just so, it's comical. You have to laugh because it doesn't even make any sense. It is the H.E. Bailey Spur. It's not the Southern Extension. And the Turnpike Authority actually admitted to that in a July 2022 memo to the governor that we open record requested and got it 14 months after I requested it, that said in their handwriting, number 28 was the H.E. Bailey. So if you wanted to check out the statutes, this is the place. oscn.net is the place to go. So they've got statutes, and they've also got they've got the Supreme Court cases and schedules and all this. So we like this because you can read back the state Supreme Court all the way into the 40s and the 50s.
And I put a link to OSCN specifically to the open records statutes a little earlier in the chat. So you can find those there, and we'll add them to the description later.
Yes. So what is really important to note is that Pike Off OTA and Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation are working hard in the legislature. We need citizen help. And we'll be telling you about our bills and all the great legislators who have agreed to run them for us. And we hope that we have some momentum this year to change some laws. And then get an attorney general and district attorneys who will actually adjudicate the law. And if it's broken, hold people accountable. But I guess that's another story for another day.
Yeah. Like we've got a little comment here. Tanner says, definitely on board with ending the OTA. I think we have a lot of people that feel that way. So,
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
But when we're doing all of this work, and Kelly's going to talk about it, is because the people aren't being treated fairly. And she's going to talk about eminent domain and the offers that people are getting and what we need to do to stall them long enough that we can get some of these bills through, if at all possible, and to help our community, because it's a lot of people being affected right now.
Yeah. So are you ready for me to go ahead and
go ahead.
Talk about some of the, so on Friday, I don't know how many people were able to tune in, but Amy and I actually did a impromptu practice round to prepare for our very first podcast episode. And in that preview episode on Friday, we touched on a little bit on the initial offers for the Kickapoo, what those offers were versus what the commissioner's award was versus what the final settlement award was. And so we talked earlier about open records request, and that is how Pike Off OTA and our researchers have obtained a lot of the information that we have. You wouldn't believe how many open records requests we have put in and how many documents we have received in response to those requests. And one of them we put in for was for the initial offers for property that was taken on the Kickapoo. And so we have that data compiled in a spreadsheet, and I just wanted to pull up a little graphic really quick here to show you all, if I can find it now, just how, let's take us off. Sorry, bear with me. Technical difficulties here.
Oh.
Okay, so there we go. Thank you, Amy. So with the Kickapoo, so with condemnation in general, so the Turnpike Authority, we'll just start from the beginning about how condemnation actually works, because I think there's a lot of people that are kind of confused about that. So condemnation actually doesn't really take place until later on in the process. That actually happens after negotiations have failed. So the Turnpike Authority is going to reach out to a landowner via certified mail. You'll receive a letter in the mail that says your home, your property has been identified as potentially being needed for this turnpike project. They're going to send you, that letter will contain some information for a right-of-way agent that they want you to contact to get more information from. And that's kind of where the process starts. That's the formal, official, you have been notified that you are going to be impacted. So from there, you will talk with your right-of-way agent, and the right-of-way agent will kind of walk you through the process and tell you, what comes next. And they're supposed to be your liaison to the Turnpike Authority. And while they're wonderful, and many of them are really, really nice people, I do want people to understand that this right-of-way agent, we're going to pull up another slide real fast. This right-of-way agent is actually, they're right here, and you're here. And so they work for the OTA, and that's who they report to. They don't necessarily report to you. They don't really work for you. The OTA is paying their salary, or they're paying them to work with you. So that's who their loyalty is probably going to fall with. And I also want you guys to take notice of all of these resources that the Turnpike Authority and that right-of-way agent have on their side, that they don't really even have to pay for necessarily, that it's just at their disposal whenever they need it. They can talk with the OTA board, they can talk with the engineering consultants at Poe and Associates, or they have access to the governor, the Secretary of Transportation. They have access to the general counsel for the OTA. So they've got lots of resources at their disposal. And the landowner is down here. You can see we're completely isolated. We don't have access to that. We have to hire our own legal counsel or a CPA, or we have to do our own research. And so I just want to take this opportunity to explain to anybody who may potentially be in the path, it is critical that you speak with a good attorney as soon as you know that you are impacted. When you receive that letter, you need to contact an attorney immediately. Just at least let them know what's going on, start interviewing them, decide which one you feel most comfortable with, and make sure that whoever it is that you're hiring is going to look out for your best interests. And I think Amy touched on this in the last episode on Friday, that Pike Off OTA and Oklahomans for Responsive Transportation are not going to recommend attorneys. That's not what we're here to do. But do your own research. Watch out for the ambulance chasers. If you're receiving a lot of, flyers in the mail, you might want to think twice about that, because they're pursuing you. You want an attorney that you have to pursue. So you don't want somebody who's looking for work. You want to look for somebody who knows their stuff and is confident enough that they're not actually seeking out the people who are in harm's way. So I'll just leave it at that. And then there have been a few people that I have referred our personal attorney to. So I'm sure you can ask your neighbors to do the same thing. Who are you using? That sort of thing. So I would just kind of go that route. But anyway, so back to my topic here. So with the right-of-way acquisition process, again, that right-of-way agent is going to tell you that they're gonna schedule one appraiser to come out and look at your property, and there will be 2 moving companies that will come and give you some estimates and whatnot. And so then that is when the OTA, after those appraisal reports come in, that's when the OTA is going to say, okay, we're going to present you with an official offer. And this is the point at which you will start to negotiate with them. And that process usually takes to get the report and all that, maybe anywhere from 1 to 3 months from the time that you receive that initial letter saying that we're going to need your property. So the negotiations are supposedly between a willing buyer and a willing seller, and that would be you and the OTA. And you guys are going to communicate back and forth. You're going to say, well, I want this. You'll, counter offer back and forth. And supposedly when that process, quote unquote, fails, meaning you don't agree or they don't agree to your offers, that's when the Turnpike Authority is going to move to the official stages of condemnation. So the first step there is the board will pass a resolution of necessity saying that we have identified this property, we feel that we need this for our project, and that resolution allows the Turnpike Authority to then go to the district court and file a condemnation lawsuit against the property owners of that parcel. So at that point, the court will appoint 3 commissioners, and those commissioners will come out and do the same thing. They will look at your property, they will assess it, they will put together a report, and they will submit that report to the court. That usually takes about 30 days, maybe a little bit less. And as soon as the report hits the court, it'll say, we value this property at X amount. And then literally that day or the day after, the Turnpike Authority will deposit a check with the clerk at the court in that amount. And as soon as that amount is received by the court clerk, that is the official take of that property. So the Turnpike Authority can come in that day and demolish your house if they want to. That's the scary part. So it's not about, the court case is not about when it finishes. It's about when the commissioner's report comes in and when the Turnpike Authority deposits that money with the court. So anyway, so now we're at the point where you can still continue to negotiate with them. And they have said this over and over again that they do. And it's true. They obviously continue to negotiate. So if you can see here on this graphic that I have up now, I've blurred out the names of the landowners just because I don't feel like that's important. But what is important to notice here is that the initial offer is in this left-hand column, okay? And you can see, what that was. Then the commissioner's award came in at, well, let's go with this top line. Initial offer was $65,000. The commissioners came in and said, well, we actually value it at $55,000. That's kind of scary, right? And then the settlement amount, so they continued to negotiate before it went to jury trial, okay? And the settlement that they eventually reached was $72,500. So that was an increase of $7,500 more than if they had just taken the initial offer. And so this is why it's important to always continue to negotiate, 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 negotiate. And don't be afraid of condemnation. If you can't reach an agreement and they keep threatening to file condemnation, who cares? Go for it. Let them file it. This is not legal advice, by the way. This is just my personal opinion on looking at the data from the Kickapoo. There could be a ton of other data that we should be taking into consideration that might say otherwise. So again, don't take this as legal advice. This is just my personal perspective. But it is important to notice over here on the far right-hand corner, you can see that people that continued to negotiate even after condemnation was filed still did far better. Are there a couple of outliers? Yep, those people down here at the very bottom of this chart, they didn't fare so well. I'm not really sure what their situation was. I know I have a link to this case, and so I've looked at this, but it's been a couple of years ago that I actually dug into it, and so I can't remember the specifics of the case right now, but there was probably a reason for it. Maybe they didn't need as much of the land, or which is why their amount went down, or who knows what. There's no telling. So anyway, so you can see here, it's also important to note that this chart only includes those the data that we have of landowners who had initial offers, let it go to condemnation. The commissioners came in and appointed awarded an amount, and then they settled after that. Some people just took what the commissioner's award was. Again, not a smart idea. As you can see here, I've highlighted in green whether the settlement amount was the highest or the commissioner's award was the highest offer or the initial offer was the highest offer. And in the majority of cases in this situation where the commissioners were appointed and they assessed the value, it seems to me that a settlement after that is definitely the way to go. So we have a lot of other data, and I'm not sure if I'm going to try to present my screen. Let's see.
And just while you're doing that, we have a comment that I wanted to answer from Dave. Perhaps pie in the sky, hope against hope. But what's the status of the audit? The status of the audit is we were told that it's coming out by the end of January, and so we are really, really hoping to have that soon. And we'll definitely spend several podcasts talking about that when it comes out.
Yes, for sure. Okay.
And to answer one more question that was on here, we are not happy about the condemnation. We would rather everybody just dig their feet in the sand and say no. But because the legislature has dragged their feet, and because the attorney general has dragged his feet, and because all the people are dragging their feet, the OTA is moving so quickly to try to condemn folks, and there's a timeline. And I think education and knowledge is power. And we're not saying that this is a good thing. We're saying that if people are more educated, they'll make a better decision.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, so okay, let's hit here. I'm gonna turn those off for just a second. Okay, so this is the rest of that data that I was referring to. I might have to split screen mine so I can actually see what I'm looking at here. Um, so this is the more complete data. And so you can see the initial offer is going to be over here on the left side. And oh, no, that's not going to work either. I am going to have to split screen. Hold on. Ooh, sorry. We're learning. We're still learning. This is our first one, so we've got some kinks to work out. So the initial offer is going to be over here in your left-hand column, the commissioner's award. So any of these blanks, you're going to see that the those were blank because either they filed condemnation and they ended up settling before the commissioners had a chance to assess and file their report, or it didn't quite make it that far. And so maybe they just settled without going to condemnation, because that does happen a lot. And obviously, you know, I'll just go ahead and take a moment to explain. PICOF OTA and Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation do not advocate for the Turnpike Authority taking anybody's property. We absolutely think you should fight it, and that's what we're doing in the background. But the reality of it is that the Turnpike Authority is actively approaching citizens right now, and they are being forced to work with them. And so, if that's the case, it would be awful and neglectful if we didn't help the citizens work through that process while we're working behind the scenes trying to put the full stop on things. So we don't want to neglect our landowners that are looking at staring them down in the face right now. Not all of us are being contacted by the Turnpike Authority just yet, but those who are, this is a real deal. We've already had landowners who've had condemnation filings filed on them, and that is exactly why I'm educating the landowners right now, because it is important for them to understand the process and to know how to negotiate it, and for them to see the data that we have collected through our open records request, because all of this data is, I mean, we have been working on this for 4 years, almost 4 years, and there are hundreds of us trying to dig in and collect the information. This is not something an individual citizen could do on their own. Yes, they can, obviously, but why would we not want to share this collective information that we have, gained through all of these volunteers who've been working behind the scenes for almost 4 years now? So that's what's going on here. That just to answer one of the comments in the, I'll just throw it up there because I think this might be important. Let's see. This guy says, sounds like you're educating people on how to submit to the OTA. How much are they paying you? Obviously nothing. So I just wanted to set the record straight. We would be neglecting citizens if we weren't helping them walk through this process. It would be different if we had, if there was anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to educate the people so that those who are facing it right now know what to do and what to expect and how to negotiate and how to navigate the system while it's staring them in the face right now. So just to make that perfectly clear, obviously no one's paying us from the other side. I didn't dedicate 4 years of my life to stopping this so that I could tell people to actually just, yeah, deal with it. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to get off that topic and we're going to go back to this, educating landowners. So here's our initial offer. The green highlighted boxes are the highest amount that came through. So whether that was the settlement amount that they came up with on their own, whether it was the jury award, whether it was the commissioner's award, or whether it was the initial offer. And so just comparing and contrasting these statistics, I just think it's interesting to see that you can see here, most people who didn't take the initial offer came out really, really well. The initial offer was only the highest number in 4 cases. I think that's pretty telling. And it breaks my heart when I look at these people who just took the initial offer, that didn't fight it at all, didn't counter. They just said, okay, that's what it is, and they're taking it for whatever reason. That's really sad to me because you could obviously make so much more money on your land if, but you're entitled to if you just take it a little bit further. So anyway, we'll just scroll through here and look at some of these look at the difference between the initial offer and the settlement offer. That one's over $1 million, almost 500,000. I mean, it doesn't hurt at all to continue to negotiate. Even if it goes to condemnation, continue to negotiate. And again, there are a few outliers here. Who knows what happened there? I'm not really sure. It would be interesting to reach out to some of those landowners and find out for sure what happened. If you happen to be one of those landowners and you're watching this podcast, please reach out to us and let us know what worked, what didn't. How can we, help the citizens who are staring this in the face right now? Because they definitely need some help. So,
Kelly, can you talk a little bit about just for the people that are going through this and on the timeline already and are digging their feet in and waiting to condemnation? Can you talk a little bit about some of the lawyers are seeming to be doing, the right thing and helping these people for a lawyer fee, and then when you go to condemnation, if you get above 10%, which most of these are above 10%, the OTA is required to pay those fees, but some lawyers are putting in that they're getting a percentage of the amount over the original offer. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the negotiation with the lawyer or what the people
Yeah,
should do?
absolutely. So yeah, there's a couple of things that stand out to me when you're talking about that stuff. So first of all, I- it's really hard to say what the fee structure will be for your attorney. That's something that every attorney and client is going to work out individually. So that's something else you can probably negotiate for when you're talking with your attorney. Maybe tell them, well, I don't like that setup. I would rather work with this. And they should offer you a couple of different fee structures. So they can either take a percentage of what the final amount is, or they can take a percentage of the difference between what the OTA has already offered you. So if you hire an attorney after the initial offer comes in, then maybe they'll say, okay, well, we'll only take a percentage of what the difference between what that initial offer was and what I can help you get. So they won't take a percentage of the entire settlement amount, but they'll only take so like let's just use an example just so this is a little bit more clear. Hold on. If I can get one up here. It's like in the first case, where did that go? Well, okay, we'll go with this one, I guess. So the difference here was $93,000. So instead of taking it on the wait, no, the difference was $118,000. So they would take their percentage on that 118,000 instead of whatever the total amount was, the total offer, which looks like their settlement was so instead of 125,000, the attorney's fee would be a percentage of this 118,000, if that makes any sense. And something else that came to mind was that I spoke with one of the right-of-way agents from at one of the landowner meetings that they held here in Norman. And I thought this was real interesting is that I asked them, so do you recommend to landowners that they hire an attorney? And this gentleman, he was very nice and he said, no, I don't. Because what I tell landowners is that this is what we're offering you is this amount right here. And whatever, if you hire an attorney, we're not going to help you pay for that. All of that is going to come out of this right here. So if you want to pay an attorney, that's fine. But unless they're part of that negotiation of between the client and the attorney, they don't know what that fee structure is going to be. And so please don't let them tell you those things. They also will try to tell you that they won't pay for an appraisal for you to get an independent appraisal of your own, because the Turnpike Authority is going to do an appraisal of your property, and they were not giving a copy of that report to the landowners without the landowners requesting it. But now they have changed their policy, and supposedly as of the end of November, they were automatically going to be giving landowners a copy of that appraisal report. But if you're not getting it, and it might still be a good idea to get your own appraisal. But the right-of-way agents were telling landowners as well that if they got their own appraisal, that the Turnpike Authority wouldn't be paying for that. And it's true, they don't necessarily have to, but it is something you can negotiate. But they're expensive. They're $1,500 or more, depending on your property, and then even just trying to find another appraiser who will come out and work with you that's not working with the Turnpike Authority can be really hard sometimes. So I think we are coming up on, we've been up here for almost an hour now, so we might need to wrap it soon. But anyway, hopefully that helps explain the process. And the point to showing you the initial offers versus the final settlement is that it's worth it to keep going. Don't stop until you get the number you want. And if you noticed on that sheet, the um, the final settlement for people who just kept at it was almost double in a lot of cases, from what that initial offer was. So please continue to negotiate.
And remember that the more people stall and come together and put their feet in the sand and make it go all the way to the end, you giving us a chance. We have litigation that was supposed to hit a few months ago that will hopefully hit very soon that could stall this out for multiple years. So you're not doing yourself or your neighbors or anybody any service by just laying over and taking that first offer. You really need to think about the long play, and we're here to help. We're giving you all this data. We know that it is very advantageous to wait it out. And if you wait it out, you help us because everything moves more slowly than we want it to. And we are trying to make sure everything is ripe, as the lawyers say, so that our cases can't get thrown out of court. And we're doing all of our due diligence. And we have 77 years of all the historical knowledge that people have pulled from the state Supreme Court cases and the archives. And I promise you, we are working so hard behind the scenes, but we need the help from the community to be strong and use this education to not be fearful and to just help everybody make this hang on a little bit longer, because 2026 is going to be a huge year. Either way, it's going to be either pretty disastrous in terms of they're going to start building, or it's going to be pretty awesome in that we've managed to push them off for years and that they just can't finish. And hopefully we can get the state Supreme Court case that was completely and utterly incorrect on all legal avenues that we brought. Hopefully that can be rectified through other avenues, and we can put a stop to this once and for all. So we're here with you. It's the first few days of 2026, and we want to talk about what you want to hear about. So we're going to talk always about legislation for a little bit every week, but then we can have another topic. So let us know what you want to talk about.
Yeah, and just to give you guys a little heads up on what's coming next week, we are probably going to do a deep dive into how the Turnpike Authority works with municipalities. We've got a big situation here in Norman where Cleveland County, the city has said no over and over and over again to working with the Turnpike Authority. Then Cleveland County came in and kind of overstepped that and said, well, we don't mind doing it. So we still need to be educating them and working with them. But it has come to our attention that the city may be looking at working with the OTA again. And so we might be needing to educate our council members again on what that looks like to work with the Turnpike Authority. So just as a little teaser for next week, I'm going to try to play a little video that was from an Oklahoma County Commission meeting back in like 2018, 2019. I can't remember exactly when. So this was when the Oklahoma County was dealing with the Kickapoo. And here's what Oklahoma County commissioners had to say about what it's like to work with the OTA. So let's see if I can get this to go.
mean, they don't like our timeline requirements. Well, can you convey to them that we don't like the way that they've torn up the roads in Oklahoma County?
Well, they're very well aware of that.
I think it's time that other people are made well aware of that. In my opinion, I mean, if they're not going to move off of this, it may be time for the sledgehammer.
There you go. Straight from the Oklahoma County Commissioners' mouths themselves. That's what it's like working with the OTA. They got duped and they didn't realize it until it was too late. And they got suckered into paying for a lot of stuff they didn't realize they were going to have to pay for because the Turnpike Authority wasn't upfront in their negotiations. So just a little bit of a what's coming next week.
Yeah, and someone put up our great friend Stan Ward, who unfortunately passed away, and he always said that the OTA was a Ponzi scheme, and it was even bigger than Bernie Madoff. And he helped us file our lawsuit, and which we won, and then got unfortunately shot down by the very intellectually dishonest state Supreme Court. And we do miss Stan Ward, and I think he'd be proud of some of the lawsuits we've got coming up. They're super, fantastic and very complicated. And we've got some out-of-state lawyers that are not tied in with the OTA at all, because it's very hard to find people, like someone just said, in Oklahoma that doesn't have some ties to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and isn't making money either by eminent domain or bond proceeds. And so, you have to look really carefully about that. But yeah, we missed.
And think about that too. Landowners who are looking for an attorney to represent them in eminent domain, you're not limited to Oklahoma attorneys. Our attorney is out of state. So all they need is a license to practice in Oklahoma. And there you go. They're not beholden to the OTA or any of the other entities that work very closely with them. So there you have it. Okay, with that, Amy, do you have anything else? Or are we ready to wrap?
Ready to wrap. Have a great week, and we'll see you again next Monday.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pike-Off OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.